Hi, I'm Carly.
And I'm Michelle.
And we are your Northwest Arkansas Regional Mentoring Specialist. Welcome to Inspiration After the Bell, the podcast where we
share stories,
strategies,
and sparks of inspiration to help educators like you make a difference in the classroom every day.
Whether you're a first-year teacher or a seasoned educator, we hope you get a dose of inspiration to carry with you after the bell and beyond.
Y'all, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest speaker, another one of our amazing specialists at the co-op. She works closely with schools, interventionists, and teachers to ensure students with characteristics of dyslexia get the support they need to thrive. Welcome to the show, Natalie Williams.
Well, thank you for having me on After the Bell, and welcome to all the listeners out there. So, a little bit about me. I'm a mom to two boys and have been married for almost 30 years.
That's amazing.
This is my 30th year to be an educator, so I've been around a little while. I have taught in 6 different states.
Wow.
And how did I get into reading? Well, when I first started teaching, I taught high school. And I noticed that the students in my high school class were really struggling to understand and access the textbook. When I would say, hey, I need for you to read this chapter or this section and do these questions or whatever the assignment was, they would really struggle. And so I went back and got my reading specialist. And at the time, this was just when George Bush was coming into office and National Reading Panel came out. Most of the reading intervention was happening in our elementary schools. So when I finished my reading specialist, I switched to elementary school from high school. So that was a big switch, but it was a really good one. And I started working with readers at the time. We were living in the Washington, D.C. area. So I worked in Virginia as a teacher leader, developing teachers and working with students in different things, and then became a mom. So stayed home for a couple years taking care of my boys. And then when I went back into the classroom, I went to work at an Orton Gillingham Academy in the Memphis area. So for those of you who don't know who or what Orton Gillingham is, those are 2 people who discovered over 100 years ago that kids struggle with reading and that we are not designed to be readers. We are not created to be readers. And so they came up with a methodology on how to help struggling readers learn how to read, specifically people with dyslexia. So the academy that I worked at was an Orton Gillingham Academy. And so I was immersed in that professional development, immersed in that culture, and worked exclusively with students with dyslexia for over a decade. And so that's kind of where my love for this came about. And since moving to Arkansas, I have continued to work with teachers. I've continued to work with struggling readers, and now here I am at the co-op helping all of the districts in Northwest Arkansas improve their dyslexia instruction and intervention and all different types of things. So hopefully we'll get to talk about what that looks like on the podcast today, but that's kind of a little bit of my background.
Wow, you have some amazing experiences for sure that you're bringing. So we know that your role is so very important in those early interventions, but oftentimes it can get misunderstood. So could you maybe break down how you specifically support schools in the Northwest Arkansas area?
Sure. So we have 16 public school districts in Northwest Arkansas that I can go and support, and then there are a handful of charter schools as well where I can go in and support. And what's really great and I think consistent is the way that we support schools across the state. So every co-op has a dyslexia specialist, and we are called to support schools in very specific ways under the dyslexia law in Arkansas. So some of the things that we do, we make sure that the curriculum and materials they're using in the dyslexia intervention group are high quality instructional materials. We make sure they are implemented with fidelity so that they are following the scope and sequence. So we get to visit the schools and see our amazing interventionists in action, which is really fun, and see our kids hard at work. As our in Arkansas, it is the law that all kindergarten through third graders are screened for dyslexia. So when those results come out, I can go out to schools and help them analyze that data, help them group students. I can suggest additional screeners if necessary to take a deeper dive and figure out maybe where those skill gaps might be and group those students. I can help them write goals for those students. I can help them pick out instructional materials for those students. So there's a lot of it though is what they need from me. So if a district calls me and says, "Hey, I need for you to come out and talk to my teachers about the new law or the new spelling test that's coming out or how to do a fluency assessment," I could do that piece. Last week, I had the privilege of being at one of our high schools and talking to future educators, so high school students, on what does it look like to be a teacher in a classroom? What do you look for with dyslexia? What's it like to be a student with dyslexia? And so we did some simulation activities and we talked about that a little bit with our future educators. So a lot of my role is need-based. What do the districts need from me? Some of it is prescribed by the state, those fidelity walks and different things and checking on the data. But my philosophy is to make sure our teachers and students are put first always and that their needs are being met.
Natalie, that sounds like an amazing job and also a very challenging job at times, I would imagine. So what would that look like as far as the schools that you are working with? Do they reach out to you or are you just readily available? And if they do reach out, how would they reach out to you?
So sometimes the schools do reach out. They might call or send an email. Of course, they're always welcome to check out our ESCWorks professional development calendar to see if anything related to literacy or dyslexia is available. I do have office hours that are on Zoom every week. So I have on Mondays and Fridays, I have open office hours where people can just pop in and talk about whatever they need to talk about. And then we do have each quarter what we call a Dyslexia Roundtable. So anyone that wants to learn more about dyslexia, or maybe they are a dyslexia interventionist or coordinator, they can come here to the co-op and we take a deeper dive into maybe the latest research, or we might look at some data together. It just kind of depends on what's kind of the latest and greatest in terms of this dyslexia world. I think the next hottest topic that we'll be discussing is the definition of dyslexia, which as of today, the International Dyslexia Association presented a new updated definition.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so the definition that they had out was over 20 years old. And of course, there's been a lot of research.
A lot of research, yes.
In the past 20 years, there's been brain scans of people with dyslexia in the past 20 years. So they've learned a lot. And so they have tweaked and updated that definition. And that will be coming out in my November newsletter. So if you do not get my dyslexia newsletter and you would like to, you are welcome to email me here at the co-op. And I will add you to the list and put lots of fun things in there, videos, articles, all types of neat resources. So there's lots of ways to get in touch with me. But yeah, I'd love for anyone to reach out and learn more.
That is great to know. So what are some key things that every teacher should know about dyslexia and how to support students who are showing gaps in their reading?
So dyslexia is something that is a continuum, so that you have mild to severe. But there are things to look for from a very, very early age. And if those indicators are not picked up upon, or maybe they're very mild, and they could become more severe as they get older. But there's a great resource, Decoding Dyslexia, out of Oregon. So Decoding Dyslexia actually has a list of things to look for based on age. And so just to kind of like share a few things. So if you have a child that's in preschool or you're a preschool teacher and that student has delayed speech, that's kind of not really a red flag, but you might want to keep a closer eye on that student. When they go to say longer words, the sounds get mixed up. Like they might say paschetti instead of spaghetti, or they might say breakfast instead of breakfast. breakfast. So sometimes in those bigger words, they'll get their sounds kind of mixed up. They may have trouble with directions. So left, right, over, under, up, down, tying shoes could be challenging for them. Rhyming is difficult for them, or they may have someone in their family that has had difficulty with reading or dyslexia. So those are some things like in the preschool. Now in elementary school, when you actually have to start looking at print, that's when our dyslexic students really kind of stand out in a way because they are very bright and they're very creative and they have wonderful oral language, but yet they have trouble getting words off the page. And so if you have that student that just can't differentiate those letters and sounds, they can't read those small words with ease, they have trouble spelling those very small 2 and 3 letter words, that to you is an indicator that they are going to need that additional support and additional screening. As they get into middle school and high school, of course, spelling is still always a challenge. Their reading is very robotic, very choppy. They have to go back and read again, and it just takes them longer to do tasks, and it gets very frustrating. And what we see with our high school students and even adults that don't get the support they need early, because early intervention is so important, is that it starts to eat away at their confidence, and they start to build anxiety, and there's a lot of mental health issues that can surround adults with dyslexia that don't get that intervention and support early on.
I'm so glad that you talked about that early intervention. I know working with elementary teachers, being an elementary teacher, we're really hard on ourselves to make sure that we've got that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 in our classroom that is as strong as we can make it. So for teachers who are concerned that a student might have characteristics of dyslexia, what are some things they should do, or what would be the next best step for them?
So in the state of Arkansas, when those screening results come back for kindergarten, first, second, third, and they are marked as a potential risk, that's the time to take that deeper dive, do some additional assessments, and say to yourself as a teacher, does this student need additional support, intervention? Maybe they need instruction in a different way. And you need to have a conversation with, maybe you have a student support team at your school, you have a reading interventionist or a dyslexia interventionist at your school, and you have that conversation, show them what you're seeing in the classwork and the testing, and you guys take kind of a look at what's going on with that student to see, do they need a different type of instruction? So there's a lot of things that you can do as the teacher. Obviously, you can allow them extra time. You can pair them with a buddy for reading. Audiobooks are always good. They still need that visual in front of them, though. That's always something that you can do. Executive functioning is very difficult for our students with dyslexia. So breaking down tasks, whether it be verbally 1 step at a time or with some type of visual graphic to help them understand what the steps are in a task. That can be super helpful. Graphic organizers when it comes to writing are very helpful. Be very mindful of the font that you're using. I know we use smart boards a lot and they're wonderful. But if your font has what's called serifs on them, so the little bitty lines, the extra lines that some of the fonts put in, that makes it harder for people with dyslexia to discriminate letters. So making sure you're using fonts that are dyslexia friendly on anything that you post or use. I would say the big thing, though, is making sure everything is multisensory, and they get a lot of practice with things that are multisensory. And when I say multisensory, that means that all the parts of the brain are engaged. So they're using their hands, their voice, their eyes, their ears. Something may be tactile in a way, like you might have sand or a bumpy screen or something like that, or even chalk on a chalkboard, that resistance. But just giving them the opportunity to engage the entire brain and in whatever they're doing in terms of literacy is super helpful.
Those are amazing suggestions. So thank you for sharing those. I know you mentioned that there are certain screeners that have to be done. So after they get that data, like how can teachers plan those groups, and make sure that they're doing targeted interventions so we can intervene early?
So once those screeners come back, what's really nice about our state-based screener is that it isolates a specific area. So it might say the student is weak in their phonological awareness, so how they hear and manipulate sounds. And so you can find the students in your class that all flagged in that area, and you can put them in a group and you can do certain activities with them to build sound manipulation, finding that first sound, changing out that first sound, and use manipulatives with it. Use cubes to help them move things around, use sound boxes, use little magnet dots, eventually use letters as you do it, because there's a lot of research that shows doing phonemic awareness with the letters helps it stick more so than just doing it orally and we don't have anything to look at. So again, I think going back to engaging all of those senses is super important. If you have a group where maybe the fluency, so the way that the reading sounds, it's not just that it's fast, but how it sounds, that's something they flagged in. You want to get that small group and you want to give them plenty of practice with not just reading the words fast, but reading phrases fast and then building into sentences and paragraphs and just giving them multiple opportunities to practice. One of the things that I've seen, not just in Arkansas, but in all the states that I've traveled through, is that the students don't get enough practice. So as a classroom teacher, making sure you're embedding that practice, that they get plenty of opportunity to spell and read as much as possible with an actual pencil and paper and book and whatnot, I think is super important, because that's where the print and everything sticks so much better in the brain.
Oh, Natalie, that was really good that you were mentioning that, talking about phonemic awareness, the phonics component and fluency. And fluency is your bridge to that comprehension too. Once we are able to get the fluency under our belt. And I like that you also stated starting with those fluency phrases and, discussing that fluency is not just reading fast, but it's reading with expression. It's pausing at commas. It's, stopping at periods. Your voice goes up at question marks. Kids love to hang on to those things. So thank you so much for that. If you could tell our listeners one practical routine they could try tomorrow to support readers in their classroom, what would it be?
I can only pick one thing.
I know we've limited, but you know what? If you have more than one, share more than one.
Let's see. Well, so if you have little bitties, if you have kindergartners, you were just talking about your voice and your inflection and different things. One of the wonderful things that I love to do with mine would be saying the alphabet, but you would change your voice. Your voice would go up and down with each one with emphasizing. So we'd say A, B, C, D, and so you would alternate your voice. Or you might scoop 3 or 4 letters at a time and show them how to scoop just the letters. And you might put periods at different places on the alphabet on the board, or question marks or exclamation points. And so just even at the letter level, at the very beginning, what does it look like? What does it sound like for us to be fluent and smooth with expression and tone and inflection and all those different things? So you can just even do it with the alphabet or with numbers. If you don't want to do the alphabet, you just want to do numbers 1 through 10. So I think that's really fun for those littles. Now, when you talk about our older students, I'm a big fan. I know this sounds old school, but I am a big fan of drop everything and read. Make sure they have that silent, sustained reading time, something that they love to read, something they want to read, and something that they can share with a friend, that their friend is also excited to read, so that they can talk about it and build that comprehension and excitement about books. Even when I taught first grade at my Orton Gillingham Academy, we had that every day. We had drop everything and read every day. And they got to pick what they wanted to read, because I wanted it to be motivational for them. So we had everything from graphic novels to Pete the Cat books and all types of things. But the thing was, they were reading and they were loving it and they were loving books.
That's a great idea. I love that. Natalie, thank you so much for being a guest today and for all of the advice and ideas you shared with us.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Inspiration After the Bell. We hope you're walking away with some fresh ideas, renewed energy, and a little extra inspiration to bring to your class tomorrow. Join us next week as we talk to Kat and Lindsay, our behavior support specialists, on behaviors.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find links and resources from today's episode in our show notes.
Thanks for all you do every day after the bell and beyond. We'll see you next time.